Um, okay. All right. So I'm going to share my screen. I have a little presentation for you guys. But I guess while we're starting, I know most of you. I think Ariel's just joining. I don't think I've met Ariel. It would be helpful for me if you can let me know when I posted this, what are you hoping to get out of this? And then I can really just tailor what I'm talking about to really kind of answering what you're most interested in. Hi, Catherine. So if you want to type that in the chat, or we're a small group, you can also unmute yourselves, whatever you think is going to be easiest. And if you don't have anything, you're just kind of here because you're interested in general, that's fine too. But yeah. And as you're typing that in, I will just share my screen. Let me know if you can see like what you see. I think you see just kind of the screenshot. You don't see the notes and stuff, right? A lot of notes.
Yeah, that's right. Just the visuals.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Awesome. Okay. So I'm gonna get started. I don't think anybody wrote anything in the chat, but you still can, and just let me know if I miss it. But yeah, so I think most of you know that I've been practicing Ayurveda for about like 8 or 9 years now. And I started to do detoxing like in an Ayurvedic capacity about like 4 or 5 years ago. And it's just been a game changer for me. And I started to do that with my teacher. And I think one of the things I really love about like an Ayurvedic detox is that there's a lot of ways that you can go about it, but it's really about really feeling your best, right? And not necessarily being as dramatic. Like I've done some detoxes where they're really, just like a juice cleanse, and those are fine, but you can really tailor your detox to how you're feeling. And it doesn't have to be so extreme, because sometimes like those really extreme detoxes can also come with really extreme like side effects, like that can happen as well. So when we're talking about Ayurveda, we're really looking at balance. And I guess I'll start at the beginning. Does anybody not know what Ayurveda is? So okay, Soleil. Okay, awesome. So Ayurveda is a type of medicine that's been around. So Ayur means self, and Veda means knowledge. And so it's really about knowledge of the self, and it's the science of the self, the study of the self. And it's basically the science that co-arose with yoga, all around the body, where yoga is, I guess, in its, a simplistic way to describe it, is the path towards enlightenment. Ayurveda is really about the mind, body, and taking care of the body to support that as well. So it's been around for over 5,000 years, and it actually predates traditional Chinese medicine, and traditional Chinese medicine grew out of Ayurveda. So they're very closely linked. And they have obviously a lot of similarities. They do have some differences, but they're both very strong practices. Okay, so Nicola, I see that you just want to learn more about Ayurveda and how cleansing can help. Okay, that's great. And Catherine says no particular goals, but Catherine was in the cleanse that I did last year. So that's great. And I have a few people who are, and they're not on this call today, but let's just jump right in. Okay, so I want to start with, I feel like this is, oh, Catherine got kicked out. Okay, so how do you feel? I think most people are showing up with a lot of different symptoms, and whether it's, having dark circles around your eyes, or having allergies where you have itchy ears and eyes, or digestive issues. In Ayurveda, we actually say that it's toxicity, or we even have a better word, and it's called ama, which means that which is not yet digested. And so that's the Ayurvedic perspective. And I'll get into that in a moment. But if you just take a look at some of these symptoms here and see if any of them feel like, they resonate with you, or you're experiencing those. Like, if you're feeling bloated sometimes, if you're feeling always tired, with fatigue or trouble focusing, it could be that these are signs of ama, or things that haven't been digested in the body. And the great thing about Ayurveda is that it does have a lot of great things around what you can do in your daily life to support feeling your best. So really, we really look at a whole body approach. So looking at not just what you're putting into your body, but also what's in your mind, because both of these things need to be digested. It's not just the food we eat, but also the impressions that we take in with our eyes, with our ears, with our experiences. They also need to be digested. And when we have a lot of stress, that's actually going to impact how we even digest our food. So it's important in terms of paying attention to those things. And I guess I think, I was looking at these statistics just today, and I'll go through them, but a lot of those issues that I was showing, it might seem like, having a little bit of bloating might not seem like a big deal, but over time, they lead towards chronic issues. And so this chart here is from 2019. Chronic diseases in Canadian adults. But what I highlighted here is in adults ages 20 plus. So 44% of adults have at least 1 in 10 of the most common chronic conditions, including things like hypertension, arthritis, diabetes, all of these different things. And what I noticed today, this is from 2020, when you get to the age of 65, 73% of people have chronic diseases. And so it really shoots right up. I think that, the previous slide showing 44%, is already very high, but it almost doubles in a very short amount of time. And the thing about it is that there's so much that we can do. There's so much that can be done, and it doesn't have to be super extreme to make a big difference. Really, I think, I know a lot of you, and you're already doing a lot of great habits. And so that's just like pat yourself on the back, because that's what's going to make a difference in the long run. It's really all about owning your habits and knowing that you can make change. So the benefits of an Ayurvedic detox, here it says fasting. I don't really love that word because I think it's taken on kind of a life of its own. I like to talk a little bit more about rhythmic eating, and just what I mean by that is eating in line with your body, your hunger levels. And sometimes doing periods of fasting can actually help us get in touch with that. But when we actually eat when we're hungry, and we also take time to detox through the year, it has just remarkable effects. Feelings of, feeling lighter in our bodies, having more energy, being able to digest the foods that we're eating, which is a big problem. Not just digest, but also absorb the nutrients from the food, enhanced immunity, prevention of all those chronic diseases that I showed, mental clarity, emotional stability. And so when we talk about it with Ayurveda, we talk about something called your Agni, which is really your fire. Agni means fire, and it's your digestive fire. So we have a lot of different fires, but we always hear you're as healthy as what you eat. In Ayurveda, we say you're as healthy as what you digest. So there's a bit of a difference there, because really how you digest the food, you can be eating all the healthy foods you want. If you're not digesting them and absorbing them properly, then it's not going to make a difference. If you're eating, green smoothies and beautiful salads, if you're not digesting them properly. There's a director of Ayurveda who's really well known, and he's done a lot of healing with many patients. And what he says is that he would rather see someone eat a hamburger and fries in a healthy way and digest that food properly than to eat beautiful, healthy, homemade food and not digest it, kind of eating it in a way where you're distracted and maybe you're stressed, because it's going to have a big difference in the body. So it really is all about digestion. And so when we talk about how we digest foods, there's 4 main ways that our bodies can digest. And that's not really the right way to say it. I guess there's four types of Agni, four types of digestive fire. And I want you to listen to how I'm describing these and see where you fall in, because you might find one makes more sense to you. And that will give you a sense to what's going on in your body and maybe some small changes you can make to actually support your digestion more. So the first one is Tiksha. So Tikshna Agni, which is your it means a really strong fire. So that is a really high Agni, and it can be also really sharp. So it means that it's intense, but over time, because it is so strong, it can actually burn out. And so it can eventually become, if you're eating like, meals and you feel very hungry a lot and you can eat a lot, chances are you have a high digestive fire. So you have Tikshna Agni. The problem with it, though, is you can also experience things like hyperacidity. You might have loose stools. You might find that you eat and then the whole idea of having an empty leg, like a wooden leg, and all the food goes into it, that would be someone with Tikshna Agni. So this type of digestion is commonly associated with someone who has a lot of mental clarity. They're, in a lot of mental fire and physical fire. And I'll get into those types a little bit if you're interested. But the idea is that they can digest just about anything they eat, but it can also become easily irritable. And also, if it burns too strong, it can actually burn out. So when someone becomes unbalanced, their fire can become very strong and it can burn out. So that's Tikshna Agni. The next one is Manda Agni, and it's kind of the opposite. So it's dull. It's someone who's slower to digest. So things might take longer to digest. Someone who has Manda Agni might feel like they gain weight kind of just by looking at food. Obviously that's an exaggeration, but they commonly experience things like a slow metabolism, and they feel full after eating, and they maybe feel heavy and tired and want to sleep. If you commonly feel that, that's the symptom of Manda Agni. And it's normally associated with people who have a lot of Kapha energy, which is earth and water. And again, I'll get into those, but it's also very stable. So someone who has Manda Agni can actually go for long periods of time without eating, and they'll feel fine. They tend to enjoy their food. But they can also be more prone to comfort eating because they really enjoy their food. Vishamagni that's the third one, and that's a fluctuating. So you might have points of where you're really, really hungry and then where you're not. So it's kind of going up and down. And the problem with this is that the fire can burn out, and perhaps you're not digesting your food properly, but it's variable. So sometimes the food will be digested really well, and other times it won't. And then finally, the last one, which is where we're kind of trying to get with everyone, is Sama Agni, which is Sama means even, or balanced, a balanced digestive fire. So something that's not too strong, not too weak, and isn't fluctuating too much. Will be always somewhere in between, but we're trying to balance things out. And there's different things we can do to balance our Agni. The reason we want to balance our digestive fire is because in Ayurveda, the view is that whatever we don't digest leads to something called toxins. So we have this idea that toxins are chemicals that come from the outside. And of course, these things exist, but we have millions upon trillions of cellular metabolism that happens in our bodies, and that creates waste, metabolic waste. And when we're not digesting our food on top of this, we get something called ama. And so that's what has not been digested. And so according to Ayurveda, that is the root of almost all chronic diseases, most chronic diseases. So there's toxins on the inside when you're eating and just living your life normally, even if you have a very healthy diet and a very healthy way of life. All of the things that you take in, you have to digest and absorb, and you need to eliminate. And because of just life in general, we might build up some of these. Some ama might not. Some things might not get digested. And this can accumulate in our body, and it obstructs vital channels, and it triggers inflammatory responses. And as I said, it's linked to a wide range of health issues. And there's a close relationship between your digestive fire, your Agni, and Ama. So we can appreciate the fact that if your digestive fire, if you have impaired digestion, that's going to promote the formation of this undigested waste, right? Toxic byproducts of poor digestion, which lead to disease. And so then, we want to really take care of our gut, our microbiome, our ability to digest. And really, that's kind of the heart of doing an Ayurvedic detox is one of the things we're really looking for. So we're not necessarily looking to kind of be really strict in terms of, limiting the amount of food we eat. We really want to just let our digestive systems have a bit of a break so that it can digest and eliminate and repair itself. Because actually, when we step out of the way, the body can actually really do its own healing. But, we do need to sometimes step out of the way. So when there is ama present in the body, it creates a lot of different signs and symptoms, things like that I showed you before, like fatigue, lethargy. You might have indigestion. You might not feel very hungry, like have low appetite. You might have bloating and constipation. And these are all associated with the presence of ama. Another thing is you might have like a coating on your tongue. So I want you to think about those things. And I'm going to put up that list of symptoms again. Do I have ama? These are similar things that I put up before. And just want you to take a moment to read these. And I just also want to say, if you feel like you have a lot of them, there's no need to worry. Just simple changes can make a big difference. Disease, according to Ayurveda, really starts in the digestive tract. It starts with digestion, and then it flows from there. So if we can take care of digestion, we can take care of so many different things, including things like diabetes, things like high cholesterol, arthritis. There's a lot of things we can do to support these things to prevent them from really becoming manifesting into disease, really. So I'm just going to pause there. I've done a lot of talking, and just for a second, I'm going to pause. Does anyone have any questions so far? All being so quiet. Okay. No? Okay. All right. If anything, I know that I'm talking really quickly, so if you want me to go over anything, I can, or we can just, I seem to have lost my, okay. Okay, so just thinking about those symptoms, and we all have them. Okay, so this is a cell structure, and this is just kind of a different way of looking at it. And if you think about all of the parts of the cell, so there's the nucleus, there's the mitochondria, which is kind of the energy part of the cell, all of these different things. And so cells don't work, in a vacuum. They don't work alone. They work together, and they're in a team, so to speak, and good teams need to communicate, and they need to communicate seamlessly if they're going to get everything done. And so in our bodies, all of the cells are working together, and there's a flow towards a goal, and there's, a lot of things that need to happen. In order for that to happen, there needs to be space, and it needs to be clear and free so that the communication can happen. But when we start to build up ama, it can start to, these toxins or this undigested food or this undigested waste matter, waste products can get in between the cells, on the cells, in the cell membranes, and it can impair communication. So if you think about it like your senses, if you think about how subtle your ears are, and how that influences how you can hear. So you think about like the cell membrane, and if your ear gets a coating on it, that's going to impact your ability to hear. It's the same thing with the cells. So all of that kind of stuff. I don't think that there's an exact I think there's a lot of different things if we were to look from a scientific perspective as to what exactly ama is. But if you think about like when you're congested, there would be ama. Or if you get stuff on your tongue, that could be considered ama. Plaque on the blood vessels could be considered ama. So all of these things, it's just basically different ways that this waste product might build up in your system. And if you find that some of those things were true, just thinking about things that you might do on a regular basis, things like eating when you're not hungry or eating when you're bored or for like emotions or snacking, eating and then not eating, these sorts of things, or when you're not relaxed, like kind of, as you're watching TV or something stressful. My daughter always wants to watch like these really scary movies while we're having dinner. And it's like, you can feel your body is in a stress response. And so when you do these things on a regular basis, it can impact your ability to digest. So, so where do we go from here? Too much stuff in our body, too much stuff in our mind. And like I said, this is normal. It happens. There's also just kind of the seasonal changes. When we do a detox and we add in, it's like cold plunging or the breath work. It is a positive stressor and it can be really beneficial for us. And so rather than kind of moving towards poor health, we have this, we make these small changes and we take one step towards better health. But as you can see in this slide here, yeah, there's a big jump. And then maybe you kind of go back to some of the old habits, but you're never going to go back straight to square one. And then you do a detox again and you feel better again. And so slowly that makes a big impact. And before you know it, you're feeling, rather than life on top of you, you on top of life. And so it's really simple. I like to break it down as simple as possible. That's really kind of the Ayurvedic perspective on why to detox. And I'll go into a little bit about, how we do that now, but I love this quote: when diet is wrong, medicine is of no use. When diet is correct, medicine is of no need. So really we can use medicine as a way to, food as a medicine, as a way to nourish ourselves. And it really starts with simply how we eat. From what I understand and what I've personally experienced, actually, 95% of chronic illnesses and diseases symptoms can be cured simply by following healthy eating guidelines, like chewing your food slowly, sitting in a beautiful, calm environment. And the reason why that's so important is that when we're stressed out, when we're in that sympathetic response, and we're in that stress response, the body redirects its energy towards the limbs so that we can fight or we can run or we can freeze or whatever action we need to take to survive, away from digestion, away from rest. And so then, whatever it is that we're taking in at that point, the body isn't sending most of its resources to digest. And so that food is there's going to be a lot of waste. There's going to be a lot of undigested materials. So that impacts the body. So eating in a clean, beautiful, calm surrounding is really beneficial to supporting your digestion. Just taking a moment to, here it says say grace, but it can just be like give thanks and just noticing. It makes a big difference because it just creates a clean break in terms of just appreciating, what you have in front of you, thanking the cook, or just enjoying the beauty of the food, the smell, and creating a little bit of space between what was happening before and what's happening now so that you can really appreciate and enjoy your food. While eating, trying to avoid too many distractions, chewing your food slowly because digestion starts in the mouth. So, we start to salivate, and in Ayurveda, I can get into a lot of the details around food taste. It's great to balance. There's 6 different tastes, but digestion starts in the mouth. And so when we start to see and smell the food, you'll start to salivate. And so that actually is going to help to break down the food. And so taking time to really chew your food is going to be really helpful for just making you digest it more more easily. Avoiding cold foods, like except for in the heart, the heart of summer when it's super hot, trying not to eat too many cold foods and drinks actually, because our body is a certain temperature. And if we eat and drink things that are cold, like ice water and ice drinks in particular, then our body has to heat it up and it's taking resources away from actually digesting. And it dampens the agni, it dampens the digestive fire. And not having too much food for the same, or sorry, drink for the same reason. So as we're eating, you want to have maybe a half cup of whatever it is that you're drinking, water, with your meal, and not too much more, because that's going to dampen your digestive fire. If you're having soup, you don't need to have anything. If you're having something dry, you might need a little bit more. Like obviously, you can kind of gauge what's appropriate. And only eating until you're about 75% full. One thing that I learned was that there's something called the full burp in Ayurveda. If you take the time to really slow down and eat mindfully, you'll notice there's a point where there's just a very, maybe just almost imperceptible, just a slight burp. It's, nobody would notice it except for you, but it's generally a signal that your body is filling up. The space in your stomach, which is about a little bit larger than your fist. You don't want to eat much more than the size of your hand for each meal, believe it or not. That leaves space for your body, for the muscles to actually like break down the food physically. And that slight burp comes up at a time when, it's starting to fill up and it's releasing just a little bit of gas. And if you don't believe me, just try it out and see if it works. And Catherine she was talking to a coworker, so I'm interested to hear if that person was a bit dubious about that. I found it to be true. I've talked to other people and it seems to be true. So that's a nice way to kind of gauge when to stop. If you take the time, if you don't eat mindfully, you can miss it. It's really easy to miss. It's not super obvious, but if you eat one meal slowly, I bet you'll notice it. I'd love to hear what other people have to say about that. Another really helpful thing is to eat your largest meal at noon, because that's when sun is highest in the sky. And it's also when your bile production is actually at the greatest. So you can break down your foods, particularly fats, most easily. And then just kind of taking a little bit of rest after eating so that you can actually digest the food, so that you're not kind of going right back into whatever it was that you were doing. You take some time so that your body can properly digest, 20 minutes or something. And that can include a light walk or something, light activity. So in an Ayurvedic detox, there's a lot that you can do. And like, I literally have binders on it that I was going through today to decide. And really, I find that less is more. So, redirecting to simplicity, I find easier and actually just as effective. Detox with Ayurveda is really about less being more. When we take out distractions, busyness, complexity, it makes things much easier and also easier to actually do. So the detox that I'm going to run is 15 days. And so, I want it to be easy. I don't want to have like, grocery list super long. And so just taking, recycling meals. So like having the same like meal for lunch and dinner, for example, these sorts of things. When we simplify, it takes a little bit of stress off our system so that it can actually digest and heal. So, taking time to rest, and simplifying our day is going to take some of that mental stress away as well. And it's going to give us a little bit of extra energy to clean house in both our body and mind. So you can, whatever that means to you, taking time. If that's all you do during the detox, you'll find that it can be super beneficial. So, taking the time to like cloud watch or, just going for a walk in nature, just time and space, more time. Yoking your body with the breath as you do movements. So like matching it up. So the in breath and the out breath, and taking time for deep rest. I find, especially this time of year, we're in the season the energies are ether and air, and you can see that the wind is starting to blow, things are getting drier and colder. And what can happen is that's the Vata time of year. It's also a time of like expansiveness. And we see a lot of symptoms like anxiety around this time of year. If you look at what nature is doing, first it's got all of its abundance, and after its fruit comes out, it's going to direct its energy down into the root. And as part of nature, that's what we're meant to do. And the way we direct our energy into the root is by really slowing down and just kind of going into ourselves. So really taking that time for rest really is what nature is telling us to do this time of year. So it's also giving us this abundance of kind of heavier fruits and vegetables. So things like squash and sweet potato, and these are going to be really nourishing for this time of year. So looking at those, what is nature actually providing us? And then also simplifying your nutrition. So again, like recycling meals, like there's one meal called khichdi, which is rice and mung beans. It's very easy to digest. You cook the beans quite well, and usually they're split. And it's actually quite a nutrient dense meal, and you can have it over and over again. And you can, of course, change, some of the spices, you can change some of the vegetables and make it a little bit interesting. But it's a great way. And if you want to do the detox, I'll give you a number of recipes and you can kind of choose. But you could just only have khichdi for like 15 days, and it would be nutrient dense and healthy, and just a great option for detoxing. But just keeping it as simple as possible, I find, is the easiest. So again, like maybe 2 meals a day and just kind of having the same thing. And that's also less stress on your system. Your body kind of knows what it's getting. We do need a variety of foods, but we don't need as much of a variety as some people say. Like we definitely need to have a mix of things, but if you kind of simplify things and just vary seasonally, you're going to get most of the variety that you need as a general rule. Another thing that you can consider is the sipping of spiced water. So I always recommend cumin, coriander, and fennel, but there's a few different spiced tea options, but cumin, coriander, and fennel is good for just about everybody. And it really it's both calming for your system, but it also helps your digestive fire really work really well. So it ignites that fire. Without, for someone who has a really high fire, it doesn't make it like a lot stronger. It really kind of balances out the fire. So you can kind of sip that through the day. And so what I do is I take a teaspoonful of fennel, a teaspoonful of coriander, and a teaspoonful of cumin, all seeds. And I just put them in a tea bag and put them into my water bottle, and I just sip through the day. You can have like maybe one of these. Beyond that, you could just kind of switch to water, but try to, keep it as tea or something warm, not too cold, especially this time of year. Really helpful. And if you just did that and slowed down, you would experience detox symptoms, believe it or not. And then more fat, less filler. So I feel like just those things, and you're going to see a huge difference. So the fat, I find sources of good fats are really calming on the nervous system. And if you incorporate things like ghee, the fats actually are a way to transport the nutrients deeper into the body. So it goes into the muscle, it goes into the bone. And then if you reduce some of the fillers like sugar, dairy, salt, meats, grains, then, you're going to get a really nourishing, you're going to feel really satisfied, and also you're going to your body is not going to have a lot to get rid of. You're not putting as many inflammatory items into your body, so your body can really focus on kind of cleaning house. And then just again simplifying. So you can, if you decide you want to do khichdi and maybe a little bit of like ghee or some like good fats like avocado, you could just have like a simple salad. just to kind of get some, or just put, the vegetables into that khichdi dish that I told you. So I've got a recipe book, and it's really quite simple. But this is just one of, having a green salad or having some roasted vegetables, just really kind of simple dishes that you cook. Maybe once a day or a couple of times a week, and you can just kind of store them in the fridge and just reheat them. Although you don't want to have too many reheated things, nothing beyond like 2 or 3 days at the most. And then lessening other inputs. So taking out coffee and alcohol, or at least just lessening them, right? Like kind of reducing them as much as possible. Just because they are stimulants, they do affect your digestive fire, and they also can affect the mucous membranes in the gut, so they can really irritate it. So if you have any symptoms where you're feeling like you have a really high agni and you going to the bathroom a lot, or you have a lot of anger or resentment, lowering these things you might find, and increasing the fats you might find kind of helps to pacify that. And then the last thing is just looking at the times of day that you're eating and just seeing if you can limit snacking and closing your kitchen earlier. So organizing your schedule, so setting a schedule for sleeping, eating, waking, and getting up, and just kind of keeping it as simple as possible, and just allowing time. So coming back to that, the time and space for your body to digest the food. So for this detox, I'm going to try to close my kitchen earlier, like around 4 o'clock. That might not be possible for everybody, and that's totally okay. But and I'm going to come down to 2 meals a day. I generally only eat 2 meals a day. I may go down to 1, but maybe not. We'll see. But I'm going to try to eat all of my food while the sun is highest in the sky. And that allows me to get in touch with my hunger. So then when I'm eating, I'm truly hungry, and I'm really, I crave, I'm more aware of what my cravings truly are, as opposed to eating out of like, oh, I'm bored, I want to have like some chocolate or nuts at 3 o'clock or whatever it is, right? And you don't need to starve yourself. Like, that's absolutely not what this is about. It's letting your digestive fire kind of lead the way. So taking some time to create some space, and then when you're truly hungry, having a really nice meal and eating to satisfaction. Okay, I'm going to stop there. There's so much more, and I don't want to. I know we're already at 8 o'clock. We're actually at 10 past 8. What kind of questions do you guys have for me? And you can just unmute yourself. You're a small group.
How I'm really worried about this coffee business. How important is it to cut out coffee?
You don't need to cut it out, Deb. Just see if you can lessen it. Don't cause stress to your system by cutting it out. Like, I'm going to cut it out only because it's something that like I really need to do, and I've done it before, but I've done other detoxes where I've, gone down to like a half cup of coffee. Or I would say you could even do you could do something like where you put ghee. Have you ever had a bulletproof coffee?
The bulletproof coffee with no, it makes coconut oil, and it doesn't agree with my system.
It doesn't agree with your system? Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, no.
So don't do that.
Yeah.
So here's what I would say to that. I have found really good success with delaying my coffee just a bit and having something small to eat before, like cooked apples, and then wait. So like having like, and I love coffee, Deb, so I totally hear you. So having cooked apples and then like half an hour later having my coffee made all the difference, because the apples like woke up my digestive system. And then when I had the coffee, it didn't wreak the havoc that it can wreak sometimes. Like sometimes it can make me like just feel really like kind of wired or whatever. And it doesn't do that. So you could play with that, but don't make it a big stress. If that's the thing that's going to be like, I can't do that, then have your coffee. Maybe just try to stick to 1 if you can. And that's okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Good question, because when we try to like cut out all of the, like I have had stuff, like I tend to kind of go like, okay, I'm going to do everything perfectly and whatever and cut everything out. And I've ended up with like styes in my eyes and like, you can get some really big symptoms. You want to ease yourself into this. You don't want to kind of just cut everything out because that's also stressful on your system. And there's no need, like, it's not like it's going to be better, right? Like this is, you're just kind of slowing and seeing what works for you. Yeah.
I think when you mentioned that before, I actually, what was helpful for me, I started visualizing like if all the stuff in your stomach, like all the bacteria and all the enzymes, everything would like had a say, and they'd be like, even if it was better for them, they'd be like, what the hell? Like, what's going on? Why did we get whatever? Right? Like, it's too shocking to suddenly not have whatever it's used to. So
Yeah.
I like this. I like the gentle approach that you're suggesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
Could you explain like a little bit more of the how to eat part?
Yeah.
Because I feel like I've already eat pretty close to this.
Yeah.
Except for sometimes, I go off a little bit, but just explain the how to slow
Yeah.
down.
Okay. So that's a hard one to do, Soleil, and here's why. Because Ayurveda is very unique to you specifically, right? So how you're going to detox and how Deb's going to detox and how I'm going to detox are all going to be different. And so how do we do that in a group then? That's where those slides that just came off come in. You're going to sit down and look at the foods and see what calls to you and make a plan. And then we'll talk about it and like decide, how do you want to feel, what's going on, and then what are some small changes we can make to get to those results. So what I kind of showed here was like the basic, what everyone can do. What I would suggest is there is a website that I'm going to send you a link to, so you can find out what your dosha is and where you're feeling out of balance. It'll ask you a few questions, and then we'll talk. But the recipe book that I have shows what is going to pacify certain things and what is going to. So in Ayurveda, I should back up. There are doshas. There's 3 different body types. We have all of them. So it's just showing where your predominant energies are naturally, like where they've been your whole life, how you're born. If you think about it, it's like your DNA, and then how the environment works with that, how it's expressed. And that would be how you're out of balance potentially, or where things have gone. And we're generally all out of balance. And so what we're trying to do is come as close to our original, like mind body state of energies as we can, and just by making small changes. So for example, is there something that you're experiencing right now that you feel, I'll use myself as an example. Okay, so like I was saying with the coffee, for me, I have a lot of fire in my constitution, in like the way I am. I have a lot of fire energy, and coffee increases fire energy. And so like when you think about it, you drink a lot of coffee, you get hyperacidity potentially. Maybe you have to go to the bathroom. Like for some people, right? It can really amp people up. People can get jittery, maybe a little bit of like angry. So for me, because I already have a lot of fire in my constitution, like the way I am just naturally, if I have more than 1 cup of coffee, it's too much for me. My system is kind of already there. So things that are heating might aggravate it for me. It's going to be different for you though, Soleil, right? So you already know your body and you already know what works, right? And so it's really about like creating a plan, and then we can talk about like what's going on and adjust it. It might be just like a small adjustment, right? Just to kind of, okay, like I'm feeling a lot of anxiety, and then we can talk about like what are things that help with anxiety. And then like I just pulled that out of the hat because we're in fall season, and a lot of people have been telling me they've been feeling anxious. And so one of the things that might help anxiety might be incorporating more fats, but then it might also be having more grounding practices and just taking time to breathe, right? Just to kind of slow down things that are going to ground you. So there might be practices that are eating, and there might be practices that are just lifestyle practices. So the reason why I had this call was to give like an overview of what an Ayurvedic detox is. And I can kind of start to set you up if you're interested in going forward with it, right? So it's going to start on October 15th. And it goes for 15 days. And so the first 5 days are easing in. So I usually do the first call on the first day. And I thought, oh, I should just do it like a week or so early, so then people can get their head around whether this makes sense for them. But you have a full 5 days to, kind of get yourself going where you want to be, get your plan, get your food, everything you want. And then 5 days where you go deeper. And so that's going to be like, for example, if you just want to have khichdi. So the khichdi is a rice and beans dish with spices, and it's really easy on digestion because it's mung beans that are split. And so even people who have a lot of issues with like digesting beans seems to be easier, but you don't need to have that. It's just an example. And then you add, and you just have that for 5 days. And you see like these profound changes. And you might even do that for like, 12 days or a little bit longer, but you go deeper. And then you kind of ease out and you decide, okay, what am I going to incorporate? And what am I going to leave behind? Either from like before, what am I going to do next? And so you ease out. So the 15 days are kind of not 15 days of like hardcore all the time. Maybe there's 5 or 6 or 7, depending on what you want to do, how deep you want to go. And then a few days of easing out. And because I think that it's great to do a detox, but also where do you want to go with this after? Like when you see, I don't want to do a detox with people and have them feel great. And then 2 days later, they're back into sugar and they're feeling terrible. And like, okay, so like, how can you kind of learn a little bit from this and what do you want to incorporate? Does that make sense? Yeah. It's a hard one to answer because it's really like, it's in the steps that you really figure it out. And so, on the very first day, or even before, I'll send you worksheets, but we'll go through them and you'll write down. So we start off with, you'll get a recipe book and we'll go over the principles again. And then you'll decide based on what you know about yourself and then some Ayurvedic principles. Okay, this is what I'm going to do. This is what my plan is going to be. And then we meet every like few days, or I'm going to create a WhatsApp group and you just text me a question if you have one, or ask other people, and you revise as you need, but you basically would stick to your plan. So for example, I'll pull up my recipe book. Catherine, I don't know if you want to say anything because you've done a detox with me before.
Yeah, it was, at the beginning, it was a bit overwhelming just because I had to, well, maybe overwhelming is not the right word. I had to really sit down and think about plan my whole week, right? Like, what am I going to have? What stuff do I need? I'm married and I have a 12-year-old daughter. And so I had to think about like, I'm doing this, but they're not doing this. We eat dinner together. So how am I going to manage this? Because I'm going to be eating different stuff than them because they won't necessarily want to eat what I'm eating. And so just like it took some time just to think things through. And like Christina said, I didn't want to be stressed out about making a bunch of different things. So I personally just made the khichdi for my lunches for work because I go into work every day. So on Sunday, I just made khichdi and I had that for my lunch every day. And then for dinner, I would either have a soup or a salad or something that was pretty quick and easy to make. And so just tried to be thoughtful about what ingredients I could use for a few different meals. So I wasn't buying 10 million different things. Yeah. So it was really good. I actually still eat the khichdi. I kept eating it for lunch for months and months and months. And then I guess maybe around spring or summer, I kind of just started eating other stuff. And then I started eating the khichdi again a couple of weeks ago. So yeah, it's quite filling, and it's feels really nutritious and really good on the digestion. So yeah,
Yeah, so I find that like keeping it as simple as possible. So keeping it to water, so spiced water, and just
yeah,
drinking that throughout the day. And then picking one or two types of dishes that really like interest you. And you can, I mean, if you have kitchery, that's you can just kind of keep recycling that. Sometimes I'll do like a lentil soup and I'll make like that a few times. And so I have a whole, what I was going to pull up was a whole recipe book. Let's see, I'm just going to share the screen. And I think you can see my screen now. So there's like a recipe book. And in this recipe book, so the first thing you get here is a link to a dosha quiz. So the dosha is it's really like phenomenal. They call it a mind body type, but it's a lot more than that. It's really it talks about your it tells you a lot about yourself, and then you can really understand what energies work for you. And so if you have a lot of fire, for example, you might want to have things that have less. And so and I realized in this book what I've highlighted is different, like, for example, if you don't like the cumin, coriander, and fennel tea, there's different teas that you can look at based on like whatever your constitution is. So I'm just trying to pull up the actual book. That one wasn't the book. It was the cover and it doesn't want to come up. So you can look at that and decide, and then just, create a meal plan based on that. And we would do that together in the call. So you can ask questions and you're just like, oh, I like this one. I usually just like circle different things. And I actually do that with Sandy and with Pat, like with my whole family. They kind of pick whatever they want. And then we make like a meal plan around that, something simple. And I try to just like recycle as much as possible. So most of the recipes, Soleil, are really easy. Like one of them is kale, and you soak it with lemon and salt. And it takes like 2 seconds. You just kind of, you put a little bit of pine nuts or whatever in it. And that's like a great meal along with and I'll also make things like sauerkraut and pickled beets and things that I can have olives on hand and avocados. So it's really about like just having like really simple meals and then making just a few small tweaks. Like I would say like probably eating mostly the way you already are, right? Like you said, your eating is already really clean. I know that you're really conscious of what you like take in already and you're monitoring a lot of things. So it might be just like, okay, maybe I just want to kind of work on increasing my water intake and trying a few other things. It might be as simple as that. And then, at day 5, you might decide you want to go deeper. And there is actually a deeper detox where you start to add in like the fats. And we could do that, and I can guide us through that, where that's where you have ghee. And I think we didn't do this last time, Catherine,
No.
but I think I had it as an option, and you start with like a tablespoon of ghee, and then you increase each day another tablespoon until you get to about like 5 tablespoons of ghee, and you don't have fat in any other meal. And so, like I said, the ghee in particular, you can buy it in the grocery store, or you can just get like unsalted, really high quality butter, and you just heat it, and you take out the fat solids. But it's really easy to buy, and it's for simplicity's sakes. But because it doesn't have the milk solids, it's usually safe for people who are even lactose intolerant. And the quality of it is so nourishing, and it just brings whatever nutrients you have like deep in, and it will actually help like support the detox process. And when you do it, it's not fun when you're taking the ghee, but the quality of your mind just becomes so stable. Like you're completely unfazed. It's crazy. After the 5 days, you get to a point where you're like, I can't have any more. Like your body, like Deb, you've experienced it with the coffee, like you just can't have any more. And then you stop. You don't have more. And then you can do a purge. So I feel like that's more of an advanced thing where you have salt water, and that really cleanses out your system. And then you slowly start to bring back things in. But that's if you've never done an Ayurvedic detox like that, I wouldn't suggest doing that the first time around. Like I would just say, keep it simple, have, your whole foods. We'll make some minor adjustments to things. Like it might be time of day. So for example, having your coffee after you've had something to eat can be a huge change in your digestive system. Or it could be, how do you create a little bit more space in your day? Or maybe you just take out this one type of food because, like if you're having kimchi and you have, a lot of indigestion, it might be like having that later, smaller amounts. Like it can be small tweaks like that, and they make a huge difference. So we would look at what's going on, what do you want to, how do you want to feel, and then you'd plan it out. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so I'm starting it October 15th, and there I can put a link in, or I can put it into the I can send it to you guys. I'll send it to you all by email. And you can decide what you want to do, if you want to join or not. But if you have questions, or if there's anything, like you can either ask them now, or you can send them to me separately. Yeah. I've been doing this for, like I said, about 5 years. And each time I find the detox different and it goes deeper, like different things happen. The first time I was really gung-ho and I started to get styes coming out of my eye and they just kept coming. But after that, they never came back. Another time I did the deeper, like another deeper one. And I released a lot of emotions, actually. It was really interesting. When you take time to slow down and really like make time for just space and time, everything changes, and it really does like affect your system. So I used to have really bad allergies this time of year, and so that's one of the things that's driving me right now, because I can feel them a little bit. But I used to have to take Reactin and other things, corticosteroids and stuff, all year long. And this time of year was the worst. It was always the worst. And so since I started detoxing, it made a huge difference. Like I don't take anything anymore. When I'm not careful, when I've indulged a bit too much, or like I've had too much sugar, or I haven't been as careful, they'll come back a little bit, but not the same. They've never returned. So it's like you can see a big change. So now I'm working on the arthritis in my left hip. We'll see. Like it's a slow process, right? It's not going to fix everything right away, but over time, it does actually create big changes. Yeah.
I'm curious if you have any, is it also helpful to maybe do other things, like you mentioned the breathing and the yoga, but like massages or anything, just to kind of like help the lymphatic system? Is that?
Absolutely. Yeah. And we'll get into all of that. So if you care to do those things, so I start my day with dry brushing. Mm-hmm. So I actually use like Garshana gloves. So they're like these dry, like kind of rough silk gloves. You can also use a dry brush, and I just rub the whole body from the feet up, and that just gets the lymph pumping. I also do Abhyanga, which is oil massage. I do that in the shower. I'm all about because you could spend like your whole day doing these practices, and nobody has the time to do that. So I do it in the shower, and I'm mindful to not spill the oil because it will clog the drains. But and that moisturizes my skin and just makes a big difference, particularly this time of year. So you can do oil massage. You can do tongue scraping, so that gets the off your tongue and gives you a sense of what's going on with your tongue. And I would like to, I would have, if you're interested, a call with any of you, and I can do an Ayurvedic consultation. I'll give you like a one-on-one. This is your dosha. And we'll talk about things like, in private for an hour, and kind of go over everything. And you can ask questions, and if you're interested in that, and that will help to set you up for the detox as well. In conjunction with, I've tried very hard to do a dosha quiz on my website, and it's not going to work for now. So I was like, it's too much time. So the one that I put the link to is really comprehensive and good. but I would also kind of do that with you and answer your questions, because
Yeah.
sometimes you go through them and you think, oh, you know, I can answer yes to all of these things, and that's totally normal. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah. But yeah, the other practices, Nicola, they're huge. They're absolutely huge. Yeah.
Well,
Okay.
very interested.
Okay, awesome. Great. Yeah, and so I thought like starting after Thanksgiving was probably a good time.
Yes.
Yeah. So it'll start on the Tuesday. We will do a call. I'll send you those details. We will do a call. The calls are always recorded though. So if you can't make a call, it will be recorded. And then I'm going to set up a WhatsApp group. The point being that the information will be available. I usually create like a YouTube playlist that you can look at. You can get into those things if you want to, but you also don't have to. It doesn't have to take like hours of like watching videos, and you can just ask me a question as well. But yeah, so it'll be every few days that I'll run a call, and I have this schedule. It's usually on like a Wednesday and a Sunday. There's a couple of Tuesdays as well, because I try to just make it as much as possible. And most of the time what I find is that people are doing it, but they don't show up to the calls, or they'll show up to like every third call, and that's totally fine. And then they start to text me with questions. So that's, you know, that works as well. And also, I have a few people who have done like several detoxes with me. So they have lots of answers too, and they can tell you about their experiences as well.
Do you
Okay.
have very many people who are interested, do you know?
Yeah, like a few people at my yoga studio have already signed up, and and a few of the people who are in my program have signed up already, and they were kind of like, but they just couldn't make it today. But so it's going to be a nice little group. I don't want to make it too big, just because then it's hard, because I want to make sure that anyone who wants to have an Ayurvedic consultation can have it, and that takes time. So yeah, so I think there'll, if everybody decides to join, I think there'll be about like 10 people.
Oh, that's great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. And so if you have any questions, if you decide like you just want to do it on your own, that's fine. Just let me know if you have questions and reach out, and I will send you the links to stuff, and also the recording of this, and you know where to find me otherwise.
Great. Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
that's great. Thank you.
Welcome. Okay.
Christina.
Right.
Have a good night.
Yeah, good night. Take care.
Christina.
Bye.
Bye.